Denver, North Carolina, Hank Parker. Jim, I don't ever remember in history Hank Parker has been more nervous than he was today, and I know how you feel at this moment. But we must weigh these fish. 610 to win. All right, watch it.
6 pounds, 7 ounces. 6'7".
I hate it for you, buddy. The camaraderie in the sport of bass fishing exceeds any other sport. There's no other sport like that. You look at those tournament trophies, and they don't mean near as much to you as the people.
He's truly a great ambassador for all of fishing. Charismatic TV personality, but a genuine guy, you know, and he's been great for the sport.
It's estimated the new world champion will harvest more than $1 million over the next few years as a result of endorsements, gilt-edged contracts, and promotions. And the Classic Championship can change a person's life.
In the world of bass fishing, there emerges a standout figure. A legend distinguished by both popularity and skill. As Brian Gumbel once called him, the rod and reel answer to Michael Jordan. Like other sports greats, Hank Parker drew inspiration in the trailblazers of his craft.
It was so cool that I got to meet Hank Parker when I was 13 years old. I remember meeting him and I was shaking. To me, he was a rock star.
Who's going to win?
Hank probably will win.
I'd love to see Parker come back and get it again.
He connected really well with the average bass fisherman.
Almost like butterflies in your stomach, especially as you root for your favorite fisherman.
Which is?
Hank Parker.
Full of Hank Parker. To see Hank Parker win it again.
You think Hank will win?
Oh yeah, he pulled out today like he did last year.
Who's going to win this tournament?
Hank Parker.
Parker's going to win.
Probably so.
I mean, he's a showman. He was excited, deadly with that spinnerbait. You know, Carolina fisherman, of course. He really knew how to catch them, especially certain times of the year. Certain times of the year when that spinnerbait bite happened, that fall time of the year, hard to beat Hank Parker. But I tell you what, very soft-spoken and a very well-spoken angler. He's taught a lot to the fishermen out there over the years.
You know, I started out, I watched that very first Classic on television. My dad was in a room and it came on television. He called me in there, he knew how I loved to fish, and he said, "You need to see this."
At Classic #1, Bobby Murray earned a $10,000 winner-take-all check for being the first world champion bass angler.
That first Classic out at Lake Mead was just a life-changing event, as well as the 1979 Bassmaster Classic changed my life. I wanted to know everything about it. I mean, how did you get sponsors? How did you do this? How does all this work? How do you prepare for a tournament to go to Lake Powell in Arizona at 600 feet deep? You can put your hand on a canyon wall. And Bobby knew those answers. Bobby knew how to think like a fish.
Bobby Murray has got enough to win it.
Bobby Murray's enduring influence on bass fishing is undeniable. As Hank's mentor, Bobby reflects on how Hank, in turn, has left a profound and lasting impression on him.
I want you to listen to what he said.
Two people that I admire in this sport for other than fishing. Now, you got to understand, you haven't mentioned a person that's not a world-class angler. Every one of them are world-class anglers. But Hank Parker and Al Linder are world-class human beings. They're Christians. They live their religion in front of you and with no malice. God has smiled on them and they know it. I have so much admiration for Hank and Al. Their friendship to me probably means as much as anything with anybody in this industry.
I don't know if that's fair that you would do that to me. A guy that I deeply respected from the time I was a teenager, and have him say that something like that is pretty amazing. He's my hero.
I had a dream of being a professional bass fisherman. You know, you look back, I got started, a lot of people kid me, but I got started. I borrowed $10,000 on a 90-day note from the Northwestern Bank in Maiden, North Carolina. And I really didn't know where it would lead. I didn't have that foresight or insight. It was something I loved to do, and I felt I was pretty good at it, and I wanted to do it. And all the monetary rewards was just kind of secondary. All of those goals, I've been very fortunate in my career to be able to achieve all the things. And I feel like that it's time for me to retire from the professional circuit. It's something, you know, you think about, and it's easy to say, and I've thought about it for a long time. And for the last really 17 or 18 years, almost every thought that I had, I'd sit around and fantasize some huge catch at a weigh-in, you know, and hear Ray Scott say 39 pounds, you know, how he's got a way of making a presentation on stage. It's real notable, and I've always thought about that, you know, for 17 or 18 years. That's pretty well been my life. But television has been something that has really been intriguing to me. It's been a challenge. I've enjoyed that. I love the sport. I don't intend to retire from the sport at all.
Coming up next on The Cast, we delve into the incredible journey of a man whose passion for bass fishing in the outdoors blazed his own trails.
Hank Parker can do it, can he? He still did it, folks.
You're watching The Cast, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
The 1979 Bassmaster Classic. The best bass fishermen in the world are about to challenge Lake Texoma. Among them is Bobby Murray, last year's Classic winner. Then there's Roland Martin, Bass all-time money winner. Don't forget Bill Dance, two-time Bass Angler of the Year.
In 1978, I qualified for the Classic. And I wasn't going to go to the Classic because my dad was an alcoholic, and he became an alcoholic off of drinking beer, and Miller High Life was the sponsor of the Classic. So I just conscientiously and conviction-wise didn't feel good about going. So I went to the tournament meeting, and I listened to all the excitement and all the guys, and when everybody left, and those days there was only 24 guys and one Federation guys. When they all left, I said, Ray, can I talk to you just a minute? I actually said, Mr. Scott. And I said, Mr. Scott, can I talk to you for a minute? And he said, sure. And I said, I have really enjoyed fishing your tournaments, and I really appreciate what you do. They are so much more classy than anything I've ever fished. I've been fishing competitive organizations. I said, this is the crown jewel of tournament fishing, and I'm so appreciative, but I'm not going to go to the Classic. And he said, nobody don't go to the Classic. Whoa, what's the problem? And I said, well, Ray, I have a strong conviction against drinking, and I just don't want to be seen in a boat with Miller High Life on the side. And he started laughing, put his arm around me, and he said, I appreciate that more than you even know how much I appreciate a man that would stand up for his convictions. But he said, Miller's out, and he said, ain't gonna be nothing on the side of that boat but Ranger. And I said, that's awesome. I'll be at the Classic.
Hank Parker's here, a Clover, South Carolina boy with a nickname of Jet Ben. The people are here, thousands of them. The officials are here. The scales are ready.
Hank Parker was Ray's long-lost son in a lot of ways. He was just a good old boy. He connected really well with the average bass fisherman.
Now here comes Hank Parker for his moment of truth.
Hank Parker became a force in bass fishing from the beginning. He achieved stardom by winning the 1979 Bassmaster Classic at Lake Texoma, Texas, in only his second year on the tour.
Hank Parker, We went toe to toe, I don't know, 4 times maybe. Old Hank, he's hard to fish with.
And I want to tell you folks, this is a good, when you can bring in 5 bass that weigh 20 pounds, you are doing some good fishing. Doing some tremendous fishing.
He became a superstar in bass fishing, not just because of his talent as an angler, but because of his personality. He was not only a very good angler, but he's an amazing storyteller. He is a good-looking guy. Don't tell him I said that. Good-looking guy, very well-spoken.
When the wind is moving the grass, you can put the spinnerbait in the grass and pull it out. But when the wind is not moving it, it's kind of lapped over and you can't make a presentation. You have to throw to the outside of the grass and the fish won't hit it. So what you have to do really is just kind of feed it to the fish, put it up on the grass and wind it real easy. And as a wave action makes the grass move, then you can sneak that bait through there, and that's when you get the fish. Just as soon as you get on the outside, you just kind of let it flutter and they'll hit it.
Watch the scales, folks. Hank Parker. 24 pounds, 9 ounces.
He was the kind of angler that took what it meant to be a professional angler to the next level. He was always sharply dressed. He never stuttered on camera. He was always willing to share techniques and tips, and he was very successful, won classics or 2, you know. So in my mind, Hank Parker was extremely influential in pushing what it meant to be a pro angler kind of to the next level.
Coming up, we're taking a trip down memory lane to revisit one of the most heart-pounding finishes ever in the Bassmaster Classic. That and much more when we return.
You're watching The Cast, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
In the 1989 Bassmaster Classic, Hank Parker secured a memorable victory. But the defining moment nearly belonged to Jim Bitter. Leading for the first 2 days with the heaviest catches, Bitter's hopes unraveled when he dropped a crucial fish on the final day.
Look out, boy, don't get in there.
Despite a near 4-pound lead, a misstep in measuring cost him the decisive catch. Bitter had the win in hand, quite literally.
Oh, no!
But it slipped away.
Folks, the next man coming in, and he's a danger. He's subject to be like a rattlesnake. He can strike anytime. From Denver, North Carolina, Hank Parker. Hank Parker, 8th place with 16 pounds and 14 ounces. He needs 13 pounds and 13 ounces to take the lead.
I knew Jim Bitter and I were within an ounce or 2. I knew that. So I come in and put all the fish in the bag.
Got to have a limited bass.
The Classic is filled with so much emotion in front of so many people. When you win it, you know, you might be in front of 15,000 people.
8th place yesterday, a long way to go.
I've seen the ebbs and flows and the highs and lows and, you know, of all of it, whether it be a classic like Jim Bitter losing. These people in the stands, Ray had them in the palm of his hand, man. He could work the crowd.
He can do it. Hank Parker can do it, can he? He still did it, folks.
Ray says, oh my gosh, the biggest string of the tournament. Hank Parker, Denver, North Carolina, biggest string of the tournament. Hank, let's hold those fish up. I said, no, Ray, I'm not gonna hold them up. Put them on the scale. He put the mic down and grabbed me by the head, you know, and he said, look, this thing's gonna be a lot more dramatic if you'll hold those fish up. I said, Ray, it's enough drama for me like it is. Put them on the scale.
Don't do it slow. I know how a man feels on death row. I've been sitting out there for about 30 minutes. I'm about to have a heart attack. Put them on the scale, Dewey.
And Ray kept talking and talking to Hank. And finally, Hank looked up and says, put them on the scales, Dewey. He didn't want to hear Ray talking anymore. He was afraid some of that water would get out.
Just a second.
Put them on the scale.
I just got to ask you one question. You realize that 13 pounds will put you in the lead?
Put them on the scale. Let's see what I got.
All right, put them on the scale.
And so he put them on the scales, and I won by 2 ounces. And I'm completely convinced, had I held all those fish up and let those water drops drop off, I'd have never won that Classic.
We're going to let the governor make the call. Now, let's remember, folks, he's got to have 6'10" to win. All right, watch it.
6 pounds, 7 ounces. 6'7".
I hate it for you, Bonnie.
The heart-wrenching loss left Bitter just 2 ounces short of Parker's total, marking one of bass fishing's most unforgettable agony of defeat stories. Capitalizing on Bitter's setback, Parker unknowingly seized the opportunity, demonstrating his skill and composure to claim his second Classic title in a remarkable triumph.
Come from behind, beautiful job. 31 pounds, 6 ounces, 2 ounces. He won by 2 ounces.
You know, Ray made the statement on once at a tournament that we were in. Roland and Ricky Clunn were arguing about who's the greatest fisherman. And Ray said, who's going to go down in history as the greatest fisherman? The guy that wins the Grand Slam. Well, I didn't even know what I said, Ray, what is a Grand Slam? He said, Hank, that'd be somebody that wins everything we got, a qualifying tournament, a Classic, an Angler of the Year, and a Super Tournament. Well, I'd won 3 of them. So I thought, man, I'd like to win that Super Tournament, and I'd be the first Grand Slam winner. It was on Lake Lanier that particular year, and Gary Klein was leading the tournament, and I came in the last day with the biggest string of the tournament. So Ray said, let's hold them up. Dewey Kendrick held up a couple, Ray held up a couple, and I held up, and we walked up and down. We put those fish in the bag, we weighed them. Then Gary came in, and Ray said, all right, Gary, Hanks took the lead. You need 11, 11. So he didn't hold them up, didn't do anything, put them in the bag, put them on the scales, and he beat me 1 ounce. He had 11, 11. So when we got to the Bassmaster Classic, I knew that it was going to be within an ounce or 2. And I did not want one water drop to fall off.
Hank Parker is the only man in history to be Angler of the Year, which is the leading angler for the whole world, to win the Bassmasters Classic. And if he can win Super Bass, we consider that the Grand Slam of angling. He needs 2 pounds. The Grand Slam of angling is here. Biggest catch of the day, 21 pounds. I think he deserves it. Let's all stand up and stretch and give him a good hand. Come on, folks. Grand Slam of angling.
Prior to Hank's second Classic title win, he did in fact claim victory as the first angler to win the Grand Slam of competitive Bassmaster tournaments at Super Bass 4 on the St. Johns River. We've got more to come on Hank's success, crossing over to the role of television host when the cast continues.
You're watching The Cast, presented by Bass Pro Shops.
Watch the scales, folks. Hank Parker. 24 pounds.
As we've witnessed, Hank Parker emerged as a true force on the tournament trail, leaving an indelible mark on the Bassmaster circuit. He finished in the money a remarkable 76% of the time in B.A.S.S. tournaments. That spoke volumes about his skill and determination.
Well, you know, really, it's been a big decision to make the announcement prior to the Classic, and I wanted to retire as a world champion, so that's the only way I could do that. But it's going to be tough the last day walking up on those scales. Oh, it's an emotional deal. I really didn't think it'd affect me this much, but coming here for the last time is kind of tough. It's been a fantastic career. It's been a dream come true for me, and my career's certainly not over. I'm looking to expand my television program and to do other things, and came to the crossroads and a decision, and I've decided to give up partly this.
And after nearly a decade of dominating the competitive angling scene, Hank Parker decided to cast his line in a different direction, in the world of television. On January 12, 1985, Hank Parker's Outdoor magazine made its debut on cable, opening a new chapter in his illustrious career.
Television was a necessary evil for me because I had peaked out. I couldn't get any more publicity out of magazines and newspapers than what I'd already gotten. So if I was going to grow, I was forced to go into television. The only way you can get enough exposure to grow is to be able to control your own media.
Hank retiring is one of them moments that I'll never forget, because I asked him, I said, man, Hank, what are you quitting for? This is too much work. That's what he told me. He said, this is too much work.
But since the wind was blowing, I had to use the crankbait because I couldn't detect the strikes on a worm.
The show quickly became a platform where angling expertise intersected with the worlds of sports, entertainment, and patriotism. Notable guests from the NFL to NASCAR and even esteemed members of the U.S. Armed Forces have graced the set, creating a unique blend of outdoor adventure and star-studded conversations.
And people say, boy, you beat Roland Martin that time, or you beat Larry Nixon, or you. I never beat them ever, not one time. I just caught the most fish, and I won that particular event. It's really rewarding on the other side because I made so many friends, and they're so important to me. You look at those tournament trophies, and they don't mean near as much to you as the people.
From the heart-pounding thrill of tournament angling to his role as a charismatic TV host, Hank Parker's journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. His story is one of passion, triumph, and the unyielding spirit that drives one man to redefine his legacy in the great outdoors.
Welcome into the studios. After our B.A.S.S. superstar in review, Hank Parker, we've got our man Davey Height here, another Carolinian who has accomplished quite a bit in the sport of bass fishing. And Davey, we do this with every guest, but before we open it up for a couple questions from Tommy and I, for you regarding Hank Parker, do you have just any initial thoughts, your opening statement per se about Hank Parker, what he's meant to you in the sport?
Well, Hank being from the Carolinas, obviously, it was just a no-brainer to pull for Hank Parker. And reading about all of my heroes in Bassmaster magazine, I actually got to meet Hank Parker in person. He was the first angler that I, had up on a pedestal and got to meet him. And I remember it like it was yesterday, just getting to meet Hank Parker. I was quivering all over. I mean, I really, really was. And to meet one of your heroes for the first time was absolutely incredible. And I try to never forget that. I'm not saying I'm on the level of Hank Parker is or was, but I remember that feeling. And when I see young anglers now and they come up to me for the first time, I try to never forget I was right there and be courteous and mindful of that.
Yeah. Well, Davey, that kind of reminds me off the top is Hank Parker had such a short career relatively compared to what we see of other legends and superstars, names like Clunn who were fishing with him are still fishing today, things like that. And when was your time a start? Was there any kind of overlap, or were you still a youngin' right when he ended his career and then you started a few years later?
So Hank retired just before I started fishing professionally, and it was a little disappointing, so to speak, but he was just on a different level. Hank, for his short career, what he accomplished and the fans that he had in the sport was like no other that I knew of at that point. So the only time I ever really competed against Hank was in the superstar tournaments that we had back in the day. He came back and fished a couple of those. So I did actually compete against him and Bill Dance, another hero for sure, in those type tournaments. But on the B.A.S.S. level, no.
Yeah. It's interesting to try to classify Hank, and the show did a lot to help put him in historical, but he was really the part of the second wave of B.A.S.S. superstars, because the first bunch, from the Classic and even in the years before that would be the Bobby Murrays and of course the Dances and the Roland Martins. Rick Clunn actually is in between that bunch and Hank, but he got to get a full dose of the original, the OG guys, you might say right now. But he kind of took it forward.
He did, and looking back, I think that Ray handpicked those stars. Obviously, you had to catch fish, but Ray's first wave, and then Hank was part of Ray's second wave. And you think, gosh, that wasn't really fair, but Ray was all about building and growing a sport. And Hank Parker was one of those. He knew, had a great personality. He was just easy to like, and just a good old boy that could catch them. You had to have that. But
But Ray Scott did handpick some of those people, and certainly Hank Parker was in that second phase.
Yeah. One big portion of you retired from professional bass fishing to jump in and do TV, somewhat like Hank Parker. Obviously, he did his own show. But explain that dynamic of moving from the professional competition aspect of it to then the teaching and entertainment value of TV. You guys are linked in that way, but in those early 90s, when fishing was growing bigger and TV was getting bigger, Hank and Bill Dance were at the forefront of their own shows, but that also helped drive the B.A.S.S. product that Ray was developing with Helen and everybody else.
Yeah, you know, I think that a lot of people look back on Bill Dance and Hank Parker and a few other in their career where they were really so short fishing the tournaments. And you know, mine was a little longer than that, but it was relatively short also. And people wonder, why? How do you get away from sport? Well, we're all still involved in the sport. I mean, Bill Dance is 80 years old. Hank is, you know, a little older than me, obviously. But they're not out of the sport. They're still in the sport. And I think that's a big, big part of what makes these people click. You know, they're retired, but they're still right in the middle of everything.
We talk about this being the age of the rookie. The rookie's doing so well at this particular point in time, but when Hank came along, he won the Classic only his first full season with the Bassmasters. He had started in '78, the year that I guess Bobby Murray won the Classic in Mississippi at Ross Barnett, and Hank went and won it in Texoma. So he was a young upstart that really, really shot right up to the top there.
Yeah, when you look at the greatest anglers of all time, not a lot of people talk about Hank Parker as much as they do, say, a Roland Martin, a Kevin Van Dam, a Rick Clunn. You know, you could go on and on about those people that get talked about a lot. But if you look at the longevity or lack thereof of Hank Parker's career, what he accomplished in basically 10 or 12 years is, you know, it's really deserves to be right up there. Because honestly, if it takes you 40 years to accomplish something, does that make you better than somebody to accomplish 2/3 of that in 10 years? I don't know. That's a good topic for debate.
Up for discussion, that's for sure.
No doubt about it. And that's one thing that you guys also have in common is the Bassmaster Classic. I know what the Classic means to me. Tommy knows what the Classic means to him. It's different because we've never been a participant in it. We've never been a competitor in it. But it's something we've watched forever. It's established the superstars of the sport. You have climbed that ladder, came so close, didn't win it, and then years later won it. You and Hank both have won this Classic. What is a Classic to start a career like that for Hank Parker, and then to basically bookend a career like that? That makes it shine even brighter probably for Hank's career.
So I've got to tell a story here. Not probably anybody knows this, but me and my wife and Hank. I hope I don't say something bad here. You don't take it in the wrong way. But I knew that Hank Parker won the '79 Classic, the '89 Classic. And right before the '99 Classic started, I knew I'd found a good area and had a chance to win that Classic. And I heard rumor that Hank might come back and fish the '99 Classic just so he could do it '79, '89, and '99. And I was like, bring it on. Bring it on.
And you end up
I would have
winning
loved to have competed against Hank.
You keep some Carolina Classics on the shelf for those decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
And watching the Classics, or did you get a vibe of Classics before you got to compete? Was that something that drove you? Because that '89 Classic at the James River, the Jim Bitter Classic, we call it, Hank Parker won it, but it had so much drama and flair, and the way it played out on TV, the way it played out in the stories that followed it, sometimes it seems like there's no way that happened, but that was a real thing, and that was how Hank Parker was able to win his second Classic.
So to this day, I call Jim Bitter a friend, but it still hurts me because Hank Parker's my hero growing up in the Carolinas. But it hurts me for Jim Bitter to see that Classic. But it also, when you see those fish being weighed and Hank Parker just jumping with joy, and he'd already won a Classic at that point, but there's no way to describe how that made me feel as a young angler hoping to be in a Classic one day.
Couldn't wait to get to that moment where he won that thing. And part of that story, the legend and lore there, we go back to Dewey Kendrick putting the fish on the scale.
Weigh 'em, Dewey.
We interviewed Dewey for the cast. We had a good interview with him down in Montgomery, and he said he was working, still working at the Bass Pro Shops there in Montgomery, and he says to this day, people will see him, people who've never seen him, who've ever met him in his life, they come up to Dewey and he says, put him on the scale, Dewey, put him on the scale, just like Hank did. That legend lives on today.
Yeah, I think all Bass fans remember that classic in particular. And Hank knew it was going to be that close and put him on the scale to it. He did not want to waste one drop of water.
Yeah, and of course him being impatient with Ray dragging this thing out. And Hank was candid enough to tell us in these interviews he and Ray didn't always get along. They clashed. I mean, Hank, because of his upbringing, he did not like alcohol. He did not like promotion of that. Of course, Ray doing whatever it takes to promote Bass and build that brand. They clashed about that, and he made no bones about it.
Yeah, you know, I, like a lot of people, have heard Hank Parker's testimony, and it's amazing. It really is, and he certainly had reasons to not want to have anything to do with alcohol in his life, as an adult. And Ray Scott was all about growing the sport, wanting things to help grow the sport, anything and everything at the time. And they did clash. They clashed, but they were both alpha males too. Hank Parker and
winners.
And Bill Dance, winners in their own respect.
Well, very few have managed to climb the ranks of the professional fishing world and be at the top, but we know the likes of Bill Dance, Hank Parker, Davey Height have all done it. Very few have done that and gone into TV. So we're recognizing BASS superstar Hank Parker today. Thank you for joining us, Davey, a legend in your own right. Tommy Sanders, a legend in your own right. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next one.